and I now give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Madam President. First of all, I'd like to congratulate you with the start of your presidency in the Council. You and your team can count on our support. I'd also like to welcome on the first briefing of the Security Council for this year colleagues from Albania, Brasilia, Gabon, Ghana, and United Arab Emirates. We're looking forward to constructive and fruitful cooperation. Our newcomers are very lucky. The very first day they have an opportunity to dive in at the deep end on one of the most controversial and politicized issues on the agenda of the Security Council, the Syrian chemical dossier. It is unique. No other topic is as disconnected from reality and does not seem like a fable made up by some fairy tale writer than this one. I'll explain how this is so. What's most paradoxical is that the Syrian chemical dossier doesn't have any connection to issues of non-proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, and this has been the case for a long time. Its non-proliferation aspects have been resolved. By joining the Chemical Weapons Convention, Damascus has fulfilled in good faith all the obligations that it has undertaken, and the Secretary General reported to the Security Council about this in June of 2014. The fact of the elimination of Syria's chemical potential was confirmed in 2016. There has been no scientifically based evidence to the contrary over all these years. Now, serious experts cannot, in good faith, consider as such evidence the staged videos that have been proven as being staged, provided by politically engaged NGOs created specifically to fight the Syrian government, such as the infamous white helmets. It would seem that the Director General of the OPCW, Mr. Arias, and the Technical Secretariat would have the final say here. However, their hopes that this will happen are dwindling. They are knee-deep in the scandal around the fact-finding mission report on the incident in Duma. The final version of that report was edited in an anti-Syrian tone. In other words, this was clear fraud. This was confirmed and continues to be affirmed by various sources, including former inspectors of the OPCW, which took a direct part in investigation. Attempts by these inspectors to shed light on the truth have merely resulted in them being persecuted for their attempts to find the truth. Any attempts to set the record straight have been refused by the Technical Secretariat. Unfortunately, instead of recognizing clear mistakes and to correct them, the Director General continues to openly violate the provisions of the Chemical Weapons Convention. I would say even more that the Director General is flaunting the fact that he is violating provisions of the convention. As a result, the situation is only getting worse. More and more dubious innovations are appearing. For example, we're seeing this in today's report. The Director General mentions that the fact-finding mission collected information and conducted interviews in September of last year on an incident that took place in 2017. Now, common sense would tell us that such investigations post factum are by definition not appropriate. How can you establish a chain of events 4 years after they occurred, especially given the evolving military situation in Syria? What kind of eyewitnesses can you find? What kind of details will they remember? This is especially regretful if we remember what efforts it cost us together with the Syrians to drag the fact-finding mission inspectors, in spite of their resistance, to the site of the alleged incident in Duma in 2018. Our Western colleagues didn't need this investigation back then. Not only did they immediately blame the government of Assad, even though on the eve of the alleged incident we warned about a provocation being prepared by Syrian insurgents, but they actually conducted a missile strike without authorization by the Security Council against government targets supposedly connected to the use of chemical weapons. Bearing in mind that we know in detail what we know about the underhanded dealings I've just told you about. It is impossible to call what happened anything other than a carefully planned political provocation. And by the way, our American colleague just said that the facts collected by the fact-finding mission in November of this year demonstrate the criminal nature of the Assad regime. Where are you getting such information or facts? These have not yet been circulated. To give you a full picture, it's important to mention the illegitimate activity of the Triple I mechanism, which is working remotely and rubber stamping the unconvincing anti-Syrian reports based on videos and information from anti-Syrian groups. Also worth mentioning is the campaign launched by our Western colleagues regarding the initial declaration in Syria. As a result, under a bogus pretext, Syria was stripped of a number of rights and privileges at the OPCW. Nevertheless, the Syrian government, showing significant restraint, continues to be ready to engage in dialogue with the OPCW. However, in reality, this cooperation is being held up by the Technical Secretariat itself, in spite of its efforts to shift blame on Damascus in the context of the work of the Declaration Assessment Team. Syria has clearly stated its readiness to receive the DAT on its territory and to conduct the 25th round of consultations. However, as we've been told, it has once again been postponed by the Technical Secretariat based on artificial and politicized pretexts that supposedly the whole mission cannot visit the country because one of its members was not granted a visa. The pretext last time was no less absurd, that supposedly in the summer it was impossible to visit Syria because of the heat. Now, it's important to understand that the dialogue with the DAT is part of the voluntary bilateral obligations that Syria undertook. I stress, voluntary. The mandate of the DAT does not provide for any kind of investigative functions. Its role is simply to help the Syrians prepare its initial declaration. It has no authority to conduct retrospective investigations. Furthermore, preparatory work is continuing on meetings between the Director General and the Syrian Foreign Minister. Mr. Arias has been invited to visit Damascus because it will be very important for him to get an impression firsthand on the ground. Would the Syrian authorities try to do this if they had something to hide? And why is Mr. Arias refusing to visit Syria? I have to say, generally speaking, that there are more and more questions to Mr. Arias. Their last appearance in the council, his last appearance on the council left an unpleasant taste. It's his attempt to cover by any means the discrepancies in the aforementioned report on Duma and justify the methods of the work of the remote methods of work. In addition to that, with a straight face, he tried to distort the content of the note sent by Russia. Nevertheless, it's important to continue to demand clear and logical explanations from him. Otherwise, he risks destroying the OPCW. And we intend to invite Mr. Arias once again to the Security Council to explain the situation. Madam President, there's one more very important aspect to understand the evolution of the chemical dossier. By peddling the so-called violations by the Syrian authorities, the UN Secretariat and the Technical Secretariat of the OPCW, in essence, is turning a blind eye to the topic of the use of chemical weapons by terrorists in Syria and neighboring states. Just want to mention the November report of UNITAD. It contains a wealth of evidence of the use by ISIS of chemical weapons in Iraq from 2014 to 2016. And specifically, ISIL used the laboratory of the University of Mosul for chemical R&D. These facts fall under operative paragraphs 18 and 19 of Resolution 2118, and in accordance with its operative paragraph 12, that information should be shared with member states. Nevertheless, no information on this has been provided either today or earlier. Now, this is very important evidence which clearly points to the fact that chemical weapons is possibly spreading among terrorists and can be used by them at any moment to organize chemical provocations. To sum up, the so-called Syrian chemical dossier has lately lost even the appearance of impartiality and the objective establishment of facts, which could confirm the use of chemical weapons in this country. Today, it's no more than simply another lever to use by our Western colleagues to criticize Syria in order to prove what cannot be proven, even in disregard of the laws of physics and chemistry. This is a situation, colleagues, that you'll have to work on in the near future. Of course, you can be ready to hear the most rabid accusations against Russia about undermining the authority of the OPCW. We'd like to believe that this topic, which has become a pain in everyone's neck, will turn towards an objective and fact-based direction by the end of your term. If you can contribute to this together with us and other clear-minded delegations, then rank-and-file Syrians and their neighbors will only be grateful to you. Thank you very much, Madam President.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation.